The war in Ukraine has so far been characterized by the sheer presence and variety of combat drones used. For the early years of the war, dedicated military drones held the edge, with Russia's Iranian-supplied Shahed 136s and Ukraine's Bayraktar TB2s briefly serving as the unrivaled king of the sky. In particular, these drones excelled in long-range operations where traditional interceptor-based countermeasures were ineffective. Later, in a cost-cutting move, simple but effective drones that began life as commercial toys began to see use because of their low cost and expendability. But Ukraine might be finally on the cusp of introducing one of the boldest and most innovative drone designs yet. Meet the Mongoose, Ukraine's jet-powered, reusable interceptor drone that carries a shotgun-like ordnance delivery system, with the explicit intention of shooting down enemy drones again and again. The Mongoose isn't just another weapon system, but a complete reimagining of how air defense should work in an era where the economics of interception have been turned on its head. But to understand why the Mongoose represents such a breakthrough, we need to first examine the maths that traditional air defense systems face against modern drone swarms. The fundamental problem with defending against Russian drone attacks lies in the cost disparity between the problem and the solution. A Patriot interceptor for the PAC-3 platform that Ukraine has received costs over $3 million, while a NASAM AIM-9X variant is slightly over $1 million. Typically, firing a NASAM to intercept a cruise missile, which usually cost a few $1,000,000 each, is cost-effective. Even in the worst case, when you need 2 interceptors, you still come out ahead in terms of pricing. But if you scale that up to an actual conflict that involves dozens or hundreds of missiles, you're essentially bankrupting the enemy by using less expensive equipment to take down their $1,000,000 weaponry. Meanwhile, a Shahed drone is estimated to cost between $20,000 and $50,000, with the lower end of that price range likely being the actual price tag. So basically, conventional defensive measures cost dozens of times more than the weapons that can bring them down. Thus, the war in this case becomes one of simple mathematics. So long as you can use relatively efficient, low-cost drones to destroy something worth multitudes more, you're in a winning position in the long run. And that's exactly what Russia has been able to do so far. Acknowledging that conventional warfare was yielding limited results, Russia significantly ramped up its use of Shahed drones, increasing from approximately 200 launches per week to more than 1,000 by March 2025, as part of a sustained pressure campaign. In their most devastating single attack, Russia shattered its own record for aerial assaults on Ukraine this summer, culminating in a peak attack on July 9th with the launch of 728 Shahed-type drones and decoys. Each of these attacks forced Ukrainian air defense commanders to spend millions of dollars on interceptors to stop tens of thousands of dollars worth of attack drones, lest they watch critical infrastructure get destroyed. It's a game where the defender loses money every time they win. Enter the Mongoose, or Mongoose, designed by the Odessa-based Technari Design Bureau as a direct response to this economic warfare. The Mongoose, or something similar, can carry out multiple missions, and its multi-shot weapon can engage several targets on each launch, meaning fewer will be needed overall. And what makes this drone truly unique isn't just its reusability, but the weapon system it carries. Mongoose, the Ukrainian name for Mongoose, uses a multi-barrel shotgun capable of disabling enemy drones by targeting their propulsion systems. Technari claims this will be sufficient to bring down Russian-Iranian UAVs. This isn't random weapon selection. The shotgun approach represents a sophisticated understanding of drone vulnerability physics. Traditional interceptors work through kinetic impact or explosive fragmentation, designed to destroy entire aircraft. The entire weapon explodes in shrapnel, dealing severe damage to the target, usually enough to blow up the hull or the fuel supply. The Mongoose mixes this with an approach that is both surgical and haphazard in nature. The shotgun ammunition allows it to increase the area of damage and therefore the probability of successful interception without the need for precise aiming. Shahed drones, despite their fearsome reputation, have critical weaknesses. Because the drones are small, slow, and fly at a low altitude, they're hard to spot on radar, but what makes them hard to spot also makes them vulnerable. Their engines are exposed, their propellers are unprotected, their lightweight construction means that even minor damage can bring them down. The weaponry is aimed at disabling the most vulnerable components of an enemy drone, those being the engine or propeller. A shotgun blast that would barely scratch a fighter jet can destroy a Shahed's propulsion system, sending it tumbling out of the sky. As far as actual construction is concerned, the Mongoose is based on engineering trade-offs. The jet engine of the Mongoose allows it to reach speeds of around 200 miles per hour. According to the technical specifications, this is sufficient to catch up with the most modern iteration of the Shaheds. Furthermore, with the effective combat radius being around 8 miles, the Mongoose is an excellent last line of defense against incoming aerial threats. These numbers might seem modest, but they're precisely calibrated for the Shahed. The original Shahed 136 drones fly at speeds up to 110 miles per hour and at altitudes between 196 and 13,000 feet. However, Russia has been upgrading its drones, so their version of the Shaheds now cruise at around 8,200 feet altitude, hitting 130 miles per hour. More recently, Ukraine's air defenses have confirmed that Russia is consistently fielding jet-powered variants that can travel between 380 and 400 kilometers an hour, with some clocked at nearly 480. While these high-speed drones mark a significant leap in capability, they do not yet appear to be deployed in large enough numbers to shift the battlefield balance on their own. This is why the Mongoose's engineering philosophy becomes clear. Rather than trying to match the absolute performance of every possible threat, it's designed to outperform the drones that actually matter. The mass-produced, relatively slow Shaheds that make up the bulk of Russian attacks. The thermal guidance system represents another crucial innovation. Technari developed its own additional guidance system for the Mongoose, which targets the relatively low thermal radiation of the Shaheds. This heat-seeking capability allows the drone to track targets even in electronic warfare environments where GPS jamming renders other guidance systems useless. According to them, the visual identification phase works from a distance of up to 2,600 feet, and the auto-guidance system is activated in the final phase, approximately 490 to 656 feet from the target. From that moment on, the drone switches to automatic attack mode without needing any guidance or prompting from the operator. This alone would make a single drone incredibly effective at taking out a single target. The developers have gone further to allow the drone to shoot at the drones without damaging itself in the process, which is unlike what traditional interceptors have done so far. Technari has calculated that the Mongoose will be capable of destroying 10 to 12 Shaheds over its life cycle. After engaging a target, Mongoose can remain airborne to pursue additional threats, then return to base to be refueled and reloaded. This isn't just about cost savings, but also about tactical flexibility. A single Mongoose launch can potentially neutralize multiple threats in a single sortie, something impossible with existing kamikaze interceptors. This reusability seems to be the core of the design process and one that is likely to influence future improvements. Hennady Soldin, the CEO of Technari, said that almost all kamikaze interceptor drones have a maximum speed of around 150 miles per hour, which will soon be outmatched as the Russians are starting to install more powerful propellers and jet engines. The solution isn't just faster drones, it's drones that can adapt and survive to fight again. The production economics makes this approach even more compelling. Ukraine's annual need for anti-Shahed drones is around 200,000 units, and no company in the market can produce this volume of required equipment in a short time. But Soldin noted that producing 5,000 to 7,000 reusable interceptors could replace the need for tens of thousands of disposable drones currently in use. The comparison between the Mongoose and traditional missile defense systems like Patriot reveals why reusability and lowering the costs are going to be a winning battle plan for Ukraine moving forward. While both systems can successfully intercept aerial threats, they operate under completely different strategic and economic frameworks. Patriot systems are designed for high-value, high-threat scenarios. They are one of the world's most advanced air defense systems and have already given Ukraine a critical long-range capability to defend its airspace from large missiles. A Patriot is capable of intercepting cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and even aircraft. These systems are large and deployed in relatively small numbers when comparing them to tanks or drones. Furthermore, each of these offensive systems costs more than the Patriot-compatible missile, justifying the extreme cost of engagement. But against drone swarms, Patriot's strengths become weaknesses. First, the battery itself contains multiple components, from the radar to the launcher to the transport. As a result, the system requires a large number of support crew to keep it running, not counting the actual operators of the system that launch the interceptor. Secondly, while older PAC-2 variants use a blast fragmentation warhead, and newer PAC-3s rely on hit-to-kill kinetic interception, in practice each interceptor is still designed to take down just a single target. It wouldn't even make much sense to use this weapon against small, inexpensive drones or glide bombs, which Russia has been using en masse. The Mongoose operates with a completely different manning philosophy. While specific crew requirements haven't been disclosed, the system's design suggests it can be operated by small teams, potentially even single operators, making it far more scalable than traditional air defense systems. Range and coverage present another crucial difference. The system's radar has a range of over 90 miles for Patriot, while the Mongoose operates a combat radius of approximately 8 miles. This might seem like a disadvantage, but it reflects different tactical roles. Patriot provides area defense for strategic targets, while the Mongoose provides point defense optimized for the specific Shahed threat. Understanding why the Mongoose represents such an important innovation requires examining how the Shahed threat has evolved. Russian engineers haven't been sitting still, and their modifications to the basic Iranian design have created increasingly challenging targets. Original Shaheds flew low and slow, making them easy targets for Ukrainian mobile teams with machine guns. Russians pushed the altitude and speed limits on Iranian engines, making them faster and more maneuverable, requiring an actual dedicated weapon that uses software and tracking. Electronic warfare is a key tool used to save Ukrainian cities. Operators would spoof GPS signals, sending Shaheds into empty fields instead of apartment buildings. Modern Shaheds pack more robust navigation systems that utilize multiple channel sources, requiring more layered defenses that simply aren't there across the entire front line. Even more concerning is the introduction of decoy tactics. The Institute for the Study of War has cited Gebera as one of the emerging decoy drones that superficially look like a Shahed but turn out to be harmless. In fact, the actual drone might have a cost similar to the FPV drones that operate in the short-range spectrum, likely a few $1,000s at most. However, due to their resemblance to the real thing from afar, Ukrainian forces have no option but to treat them as such and deploy countermeasures anyway. This allows Russia to strain Ukraine's defensive systems with even more drones, even if they wouldn't do much damage anyway. Russia has also been experimenting with new Shahed variants. The Shahed 238, known as Geran 3 in Russian service, is a turbojet-powered loitering munition. A Russian major general claimed in an interview with Russian agency Sputnik that the Shahed 238 would be a new version of the Geran 2 and that it would be capable of traveling at top speeds of 500 miles per hour during a dive. The Mongoose's speed of around 200 miles per hour puts it in an interesting position against these evolving threats. While it can't match the dive speed of jet-powered variants, it can intercept the cruise speed of most current Shahed models. This would make it a vital part of Ukraine's future defensive systems. For jet-powered drones, similar jet-powered interceptor drones could be developed to take up the slack. But despite its promise, the Mongoose still faces a few significant challenges in scaling from prototype to production system. According to Soldin, Technari has completed the first squadron of Mongoose interceptors by mid-2025 and was preparing to hand over the mock-ups to Ukraine's air defense brigades. The demand from military units is clearly there, as the Russian attacks have drastically increased in intensity and frequency from 2024 onward. But moving from prototypes to mass production requires industrial capacity that Ukraine, under wartime conditions, struggles to maintain. According to Defender Media, Technari has already attracted investment for further development and scaling of Mongoose. However, the scale of the challenge is enormous, with Russia producing more than 5,000 long-range drones each month, roughly split between Shahed-type strike drones and decoy models. Ukraine needs production capacity that can match or exceed this output through reusable platforms. The training challenge shouldn't be underestimated either. While the Mongoose appears easier to operate than complex systems like Patriot, it still requires skilled operators. Unlike kamikaze drones that need minimal training, reusable platforms require investment in personnel who can maximize the system's potential. Additionally, there are limitations from the technical specifications of the system. First is the relatively low engagement range of only 8 miles. While this is sufficient for point defense, it severely limits the system's ability to provide area coverage. It would mean Ukraine would need to stagger the drones across the front lines, which further increases the strain on any given drone. The drone's coverage areas also need to heavily overlap, as Russia doesn't just launch a single drone at any given target, but dozens of them, and all at the same time. While the Mongoose can destroy multiple drones in an engagement, it's safe to assume that it can't do so simultaneously. The purported shotgun system only makes sense if it works from a relatively short, almost point-blank range, meaning that the drone needs to track and fly to every drone it faces. Against a swarm of Shaheds, a single Mongoose might only be able to destroy a few. The speed limitations could also be a concern. If Russia keeps improving on the jet propulsion design or brings its costs low enough to warrant mass production, the Mongoose will also need to implement larger and stronger engines to catch up. This could require overhauling the design to fit with the increased demands of the engine, such as fuel intake, creating an entirely different version of the drone. Mongoose also uses thermal guidance, which has a few issues of its own. First off, traditional Shahed drones don't emit a lot of it, meaning the sensors are likely extremely precise and therefore expensive to produce. Secondly, thermal imaging can be affected by inclement weather. With an already low engagement range, not being able to pick out a target until it gets even closer could mean the drone might miss entirely. Of course, all of these systems could be improved on, and we have very limited information on the drone as is. Given that Ukraine would naturally want to keep a lot of information secret, there's no telling what stage the drone is currently at and how many iterations are being worked on to actively improve it. One potential development path could involve networking multiple Mongoose platforms to create coordinated interception capabilities. Just as Ukraine has developed sophisticated drone swarm tactics, defensive drone swarms could potentially overwhelm attacking formations through superior numbers and coordination. Looking at its long-term potential, Mongoose represents more than just another weapon system. It embodies a fundamentally different approach to air defense that could influence military thinking far beyond Ukraine's borders. Traditional air defense is based on the assumption that each incoming threat is valuable enough to justify expensive interceptors. This worked when dealing with limited numbers of sophisticated missiles, but breaks down completely when facing swarms of cheap drones. The Mongoose suggests a different model: reusable, relatively inexpensive platforms that can win through persistence rather than individual engagement superiority. This philosophy has implications for how other nations might approach similar threats. Ukraine needs up to 25 more Patriot systems to cover its key urban areas, according to the former deputy head of the Ukrainian military's general staff. But even with unlimited Patriot systems, the economic model simply doesn't work against massive drone swarms. The Mongoose emerges from the same culture of innovation that has produced Ukraine's remarkable drone capabilities throughout the war. From garage workshops converting consumer quadcopters into tank killers to sophisticated AI-guided swarm attacks, Ukraine has consistently found ways to do more with less. This was driven by sheer necessity, but it also illustrates that traditional military procurement might have become too slow for modern standards, where new wartime developments happen in weeks rather than years. As such, the drone system could also influence other countries and how they view defense investments. When given a choice between a few Patriot batteries, likely the most the US would sell at a time to any given country, and thousands of smaller drone systems that are easier to operate, most would likely opt for the second option. Plus, the drones being cheaper makes them more disposable in a way. If there's enough production capacity for mass manufacturing, given the small size and technological requirements of the system, countries could order the drones and get them as they need them, rather than having one or two expensive systems that only end up being shown on parades. As the Mongoose moves from prototype to production, several key questions will determine its ultimate impact. The first is production capacity. Following successful combat trials, Technari has announced plans to scale up manufacturing using partner facilities that specialize in UAV assembly, but the actual deals have not been made public. The scalability question becomes even more critical when considering the evolving threat. Russia continues to increase both the quantity and sophistication of its drone attacks, forcing defensive systems to improve continuously just to maintain effectiveness. Perhaps the most significant aspect of the Mongoose is whether it can truly take down multiple threats in a single engagement. If the drone's capabilities are actually showcased in real-life scenarios, it could become one of the premier anti-air systems in the world. But only time will tell if this shotgun-carrying, jet-powered predator can truly tame the drone swarms that have terrorized Ukrainian skies. All we know is that its introduction comes just in time. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like to see another devastating drone development from Ukraine, check out this video. And if you want to stay up to date with global geopolitics, subscribe to The Military Show for daily videos.